Good morning, everyone. Bon matin, tout le monde. C'est un grand plaisir d'être ici. It's wonderful to be back here in New Brunswick. And I'm so pleased to be joined today by Premier Blaine Higgs and members of the PC caucus. As well as some of our fantastic candidates here in New Brunswick. Now, I've just had the honor of meeting with some true local heroes, the dedicated volunteers of the Upper Kingsclear Fire Department. And I want to start today by thanking you and volunteers across the country for your service. Canada would not be the great country that it is without the contributions of our volunteers, the people who answer the call of civic duty, the people who choose to say yes to helping others, even if it means putting themselves in harm's way. Whether it's a service club, their child sports league, charity work for a cause close to their heart, or emergency response. There are almost 13 million Canadians who volunteer more than 2 billion hours of time each year. Canadians step up. Canadians help each other to get ahead. And that's what I love about this country. And I believe government should encourage it. Près de 13 millions de Canadiens et de Canadiennes font plus de 2 milliards d'heures de bénévolat chaque année. Les Canadiens et les Canadiennes agissent. Ils s'aident mutuellement à améliorer le quotidien. C'est ce que j'aime de ce pays, et je crois que le gouvernement devrait encourager ça. Because there are so many Canadians working hard across the country to support their families and their communities, giving what little time they have in service of their fellow citizens. They are people of courage, character, and strength, like those with me today. It is my privilege today to be joined by search and rescue volunteers and volunteer firefighters. These men and women not only serve their community, but they save lives. In many towns and cities from coast to coast, it's volunteers who are the front line of community fire protection. Of the almost 4,000 fire departments in Canada, 3,000 are staffed by all volunteer teams. For those volunteers, the call can come at any time. During their Christmas dinner, their kids' piano recital, or during a night out with a loved one. It's a huge commitment, a giant responsibility, a sacrifice. So is volunteer search and rescue. In cities, towns, and rural areas across Canada, when someone goes missing, teams of volunteers spring into action. New Brunswick's very first volunteer search and rescue team was formed in Fredericton in 1983. Today, there are 10 teams located across the province and more than 330 volunteer members. They provide vital services in New Brunswick's dense forests, from missing person and evidence searches to emergency preparedness and training. So today, I'm extremely proud to be here to announce how a new Conservative government will further support search and rescue volunteers and volunteer firefighters across Canada. Right now, search and rescue volunteers and volunteer firefighters have to do 200 hours of service before they qualify for the current tax credits. We will lower that criteria from 200 to 150 hours to ensure that more Canadians are eligible for these benefits. It was a Conservative government that brought in the existing tax credits for these community heroes. And a new Conservative government will make it easier to qualify so more volunteers can get ahead. We all know money isn't why they do what they do. But this change will help more get more money in their pockets. It will help to pay for gear and training. Most of all, it's a recognition of what they do for us and a way for us to say thanks. Aujourd'hui, je suis extrêmement fier d'annoncer comment un nouveau gouvernement conservateur va soutenir les bénévoles en recherche et sauvetage et les pompiers volontaires partout au Canada. Pour le moment, les bénévoles en recherche et sauvetage et les pompiers volontaires doivent cumuler 200 heures de service avant d'être admissibles au crédit d'impôt existant. Nous allons réduire ce critère de 200 à 150 heures pour mettre plus d'argent dans les poches de ces héros locaux. C'est un gouvernement conservateur qui a créé les crédits d'impôt existants pour ces héros communautaires. Et un nouveau gouvernement conservateur va élargir l'admissibilité pour qu'un plus grand nombre de bénévoles améliorent leur quotidien. Nous savons qu'ils ne font pas ça pour l'argent. Mais ce changement va mettre plus d'argent dans leur poche. Il va les aider à payer l'équipement et la formation. Et avant tout, c'est une reconnaissance de ce qu'ils font pour nous et une façon de leur dire merci. Throughout this campaign, I have spoken about my plan to make your life more affordable for you, for your kids, and for your retirement. And that's really what this campaign will come down to. Who do you trust to put more money in your pockets so you and your family can get ahead? Justin Trudeau has already raised taxes on 80% of middle-class families. And if he's re-elected, his carbon tax will only go up, adding at least 31 cents to the price of gasoline and hundreds, potentially thousands more for everyday household essentials. On the other hand, we will bring in a universal tax cut for every Canadian that will save a couple with average salaries $850 a year. We will bring in tax credits for children's arts, fitness, and learning, making it more affordable to enroll your child in soccer and other extracurricular activities. We will give a green public transit tax credit to those who take the bus or train to work, and we will make maternity and parental EI benefits tax-free. We'll increase the age credit by $1,000, putting $300 back into the pockets of a senior couple, and we'll boost the RESP, helping parents save to send their child to post-secondary school. You work hard for your money, and volunteers like the ones here today and across the country work especially hard for no money at all. And a dollar is always better spent by the person who earned it than by the politician who taxed it. And I know how hard you're working, how Canadians feel like they are falling further behind, and that should never be the case, and certainly not for community heroes who risk everything to help others. And that's why we're lowering the number of hours required and making it easier to qualify for the benefits to which you are entitled. A new Conservative government will live within its means. We will lower your taxes and put more money in your pocket for you, for your kids, for your aging parents. Un nouveau gouvernement conservateur va vivre selon ses moyens. Nous allons réduire vos impôts et mettre plus d'argent dans vos poches. Plus pour vous dès maintenant. Pour vos parents âgés dès maintenant. Parce que c'est le temps pour vous d'améliorer votre quotidien. Because it's time for you to get ahead. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Happy to take your questions.
Good morning, Mr. Scheer. David Aiken from Global News. Last night we heard the issue of the ruling in the Quebec court about the medically assisted dying bill come up, and I think you mentioned you'd like to see it go to the Supreme Court. You wanted some certainty. I'd like to hear, though, your opinion about the ruling and whether or not you agree that the law ought to be broadened, as the judge agreed, to include those with painful and curable conditions, though not necessarily terminal conditions. Do you agree that the pool of people who should be able to access a medically assisted death should be broadened?
Mm-hmm. Well, when this bill was before Parliament, I voted against the current government's legislation because I did not believe that it had enough safeguards in it. And now with this ruling, I think it's best that we appeal it to the Supreme Court so we can get certainty around for the framework within which Parliament can legislate. Oui, quand ce projet de loi était devant la Chambre des communes, j'ai voté contre ce projet de loi à cause de mes inquiétudes pour les protections pour les gens vulnérables. Maintenant, je pense que c'est la meilleure approche d'avoir une décision finale de la Cour suprême pour donner le cadre pour les députés de régler ce dossier.
Just on a separate topic, we heard last night about the Trudeau campaign and two planes. It's very entertaining listening to your response on that matter. But more seriously, I mean, a lot of people just might wonder, why wouldn't this campaign buy some carbon offsets? And hard to see the downside on what a lot of Canadians think is a very reasonable thing to do. They'll buy some offsets for your carbon footprint. Why not? Why wouldn't your campaign have done that?
Well, our plane is actually using less fuel than the plane that's carrying Justin Trudeau and his staff and the media around. So right there, we're emitting fewer emissions, and we've decided to get by with just the one plane. We've taken that decision. We found that we've got more than enough space. We can make do with just the one. And I don't buy Mr. Trudeau's excuse that somehow purchasing some credits excuses him, gives him the privilege to burn more fuel at tens of thousands of gallons per hour or per flight. Nous avons pris la décision de d'avoir seulement un avion. Et notre avion principal, notre avion utilise moins d'essence que l'avion principal de Justin Trudeau. C'est à lui d'expliquer pourquoi il pense que l'achat des crédits pour le carbone excuse le fait qu'il utilise bien plus d'énergie que notre campagne.
Salima Shivji, CBC News. Mr. Scheer, the consensus in Quebec media is that you lost last night's first French debate. What does it say to Quebec voters that you sort of hightailed it out of there and headed here to New Brunswick instead of spending more time campaigning in Quebec after the performance yesterday?
Well, of course, I disagree with that entirely. I think I believe last night, Quebecers heard very clearly about where the parties stand on making life more affordable. They heard from me the very concrete and specific measures that we will take to put more money in their pockets so they can get ahead. I participated in the debate. I participated in the media availability afterwards. I was in Quebec for the day prior, as well as the day of. And here I am again, highlighting another measure to put more money in the pockets of Canadians.
En français.
Oui, je crois que j'ai fait très bon hier soir. C'est clair qu'il y a seulement moi qui a expliqué une vision pour rendre la vie plus abordable. Et je crois que les Canadiens, les Québécois et Québécoises ont entendu un vrai plan, les mesures concrètes pour laisser plus d'argent dans leur poche, notre baisse d'impôt universelle, nos crédits pour le transport en commun, l'augmentation pour le AEE et la vue avec Justin Trudeau une faux écolo, une hypocrite carbonique qui a des bons paroles pour la caméra et pour les médias, mais dans sa vie personnelle, fait quelque chose tellement complètement d'autre.
Juste pour continuer sur le débat, il y a plusieurs personnes qui ont reproché le fait que vous n'avez jamais dit votre position personnelle sur l'avortement, notamment. Vous l'avez dit sur d'autres sujets, mais pas sur celui-là. J'aimerais juste comprendre pourquoi vous ne le dites pas. Qu'est-ce qui est gênant de dire, comme d'autres l'ont fait, que vous êtes contre et que c'est correct? Pourquoi vous ne le dites pas?
Mais au contraire, j'ai toujours été clair sur cette question. Je suis personnellement pro-vie. J'ai toujours répondu les questions. Mais la chose la plus importante pour tous les Canadiens, tous les Québécois et Québécoises, c'est le fait que j'ai fait un engagement que, comme Premier ministre, je ne vais pas ouvrir ce débat et je vais voter contre n'importe quelle mesure qui essaie de réouvrir ce débat.
English, please.
I've always answered this question openly and honestly, from the first time I ran for office in 2004 to when I ran for the leadership of the party in 2016 to after I won the leadership of the party. My personal position has always been open and consistent. I am personally pro-life, but I've also made the commitment that as leader of this party, it is my responsibility to ensure that we do not reopen this debate, that we focus on issues that unite our party and unite Canadians, and that's exactly what I'll do, and that's why I will vote against measures that attempt to reopen this debate.
Et pensez-vous, là, qu'en disant clairement, on va être capable de passer à autre chose? Pensez-vous que maintenant que vous le dites clairement, c'est fini, le débat est clos, puis vous allez arrêter d'en parler pendant la campagne? Ou vous pensez que vos adversaires vont continuer de ramener cet enjeu-là sur la table?
Mais c'est clair que c'est une stratégie libérale historique que quand un gouvernement libéral était dans les scandales et dans la corruption, il essaie de créer la peur dans les Canadiens. Il essaie de diviser les Canadiens avec les fausses attaques. Alors, je m'attends que Justin Trudeau va continuer d'essayer de créer la peur et la division entre les Canadiens et Canadiennes, mais les Canadiens et Canadiens peuvent avoir confiance que, comme Premier ministre du Canada, je ne vais pas réouvrir ce débat.
Good morning, Mr. Scheer. Giuseppe Valiante, Canadian Press. In 2015, a post-mortem conducted by your party found that people were frustrated by a lack of new ideas in the conservative movement. And today you announced again a small tax credit. Yet to date, the majority of your promises can be directly traced back to the 2015 platform and earlier. Why is that? And what is your vision?
Well, I, of course, reject the premise of the question. Our platform, the announcements that we've made so far are full of exciting and innovative ideas, including our real plan for the environment, creating the green patent tax credit, which will allow companies to innovate and conduct research and development here in Canada, leading to new technologies that lower emissions. Our universal tax cut is an innovative way, is a comprehensive tax cut that applies to every single Canadian taxpayer. Our foreign policy is clearly contains measures that are new for our party. So I'm excited to continue to bring out these innovative policies that are clearly resonating with Canadians across the country.
And you just mentioned again that you were personally pro-life. Trudeau just a few moments ago in Montreal said that you were against the rights of women. Can you point to a single policy in your platform that you believe shows that you do support women's rights?
Well, of course, all our policies are centered around treating all Canadians equally and supporting the rights of women. We will continue to ensure that women are treated fairly and equally in this country, and that their rights are always protected.
Glenn McGregor, CTV News. And Mr. Blanchet said yesterday that Quebecers should support him because the Parti Québécois resembles them. And I'm wondering if you interpret that as many are doing, as being racist, that because they don't visually look like, the other parties don't visually look like Quebecers. What's your response to that?
The Parti Québécois resembles him?
Sorry, did I say Parti Québécois?
Yeah.
Bloc Québécois.
Oh, Bloc Québécois.
Yeah, of course.
Well, look, I'll leave it to Monsieur Blanchet to explain what he meant by that. I believe that Quebecers want adoption to have representatives who have the ability to deliver results for Quebec, that they can have people around the decision-making table. The Bloc Québécois has always in the past played on division within the Canadian population, within the Quebec population. I believe in finding the common ground between all different types of Canadians, people who have come here from all different parts of the world, and celebrating what unites us, and protecting the very reasons why people came to this country. And I'm going to continue to run a positive and inclusive campaign. Oui, mais je vais laisser à M. Blanchet d'expliquer ses paroles. Notre parti est une partie inclusive qui célébrait le fait que nous avons des gens de partout au monde et on va toujours protéger, d'assurer que le Canada est le seul pays que les gens veulent arriver. Et je crois aussi que les Québécois et Québécoises veulent avoir des députés autour de la table des décisions qui peuvent livrer les résultats pour le Québec, comme le seul rapport d'impôt. Et finalement de mettre fin au déversement d'eau usée.
Also in Montreal this morning, Mr. Trudeau said that you're attacking him over the second airplane and his use of carbon offset credits because you don't have a meaningful plan to cut carbon emissions. So I'll give you a chance to respond to that.
Well, we actually have a real plan for the environment. Our plan will lower emissions. His plan fails to take into account that if we do not take the climate change fight global, if we do nothing to ensure that Canada can help lower emissions on a global context, then the planet is not better off. My plan exactly targets that, recognizing that we can export our clean technology, our carbon capture. If we can ensure that other countries take advantage of the types of things that we've perfected here, we can actually lower emissions in a substantial way. Otherwise, global emissions are just going to continue to go up. And we can chase away jobs and investment here. We can make the cost of living even higher and higher here, only to see that economic activity replaced by production in China, in Indonesia, in India, and emissions will actually go up for the world. So the planet's not better off under Justin Trudeau's approach. It will be under our approach.
Good morning, Mr. Scheer. Steve Scheer with Reuters. You've made a number of promises, and you've talked about, and so have your rivals, affordability. You talked about it today. But there's been little talk about the root problem for the Canadian economy, which is productivity and potential growth. So my question to you is, what is your plan to do to make the Canadian economy more competitive? Mm-hmm.
Well, you rightly point out that under Justin Trudeau, Canada has fallen behind our largest trading partners and our competitors when it comes to productivity. That is through a number of issues. I've made the commitment that in addition to eliminating corporate welfare for highly profitable companies and companies that export take the money for operations in other countries. We will also conduct a regulatory review that will reduce the red tape burden on Canadian businesses and companies. Right now, there are billions of dollars in lost productivity just because of government compliance, often with outdated regulations that do not serve a purpose other than to create paperwork. So we are going to attack that issue to make sure that Canadian companies, while meeting very high standards for the environment, for health and safety, and for workers' rights, can do what they do best, which is produce goods and provide services and export that around the world.
Economists say that Canada can slightly increase its deficit spending and still bring down the debt over the next few years, especially if growth continues as it's projected. And they say that would be a good idea because private debt in Canada is quite high. So my question to you is, would you consider pushing back or abandoning your goal to balance the budget in 5 years if that proves true, if the economy needs some support?
Well, I will not take the advice from liberal economists who believe that budgets balance themselves or that people become richer by paying more taxes. Those are things that I've made my choice. I don't agree with that, and Canadians can make their choice on October 21st. The massive amounts, tens of billions of dollars of new debt that Justin Trudeau has added to the national debt comes with a price tag. It comes with a cost. Interest on that debt has to be paid. And I believe that Canadians would rather see their tax dollars going into improved services or into tax cuts rather than see their tax dollar going to pay the interest on that debt just going to banks. With the Liberals, you get two speeds for government spending, fast and faster. And if there are, as many analysts indicate, there are some troubling signs on the horizon for Canada's economy, we need to get our fiscal house in order. The Liberals have put us in a position now where if there is a difficult period ahead, there is very limited flexibility that they will have to operate under because we are carrying around these massive deficits. And I believe that it's not fair to current taxpayers who know that their taxes will go up after the election, or to future taxpayers who will have to pay back the interest on the debt that Trudeau has accumulated. That's why we're committed to a 5-year time frame.
Janice McGregor from CBC News. Perhaps as early as next week, in a number of school boards in Ontario, there could be classroom disruptions if the Ford government cannot reach an agreement with CUPE. What are your federal Conservative candidates in Ontario hearing at the door about this Labour situation in public schools?
Well, I believe people in Ontario are aware of the fact that this particular union and education unions in general have gone on strike under governments of all stripes. They went on strike under the McGuinty Liberals. They've been on strike under the Bob Rae NDP going back throughout decades in Ontario. I think people in Ontario understand that this is a provincial issue. It's up to the union representatives and the provincial government to come to a deal.
But I asked you specifically what your federal candidates are hearing at the door on this issue. I see one provincial premier at this event. I only am led to believe then that the federal and the provincial parties of the same stripe are in conversations about strategy and coordinating messages. What are your federal Conservative candidates hearing at the door on this?
Well, I'll just maybe correct one thing there. I'm very honored to have Premier Higgs here, but it's not as if we're sharing strategy and communications. It's just quite frankly that we happen to have the same position on some issues, like scrapping the carbon tax, like standing up for Canada's energy sector, like having a government that lives within its means so that we can lower taxes and put more money in the pockets of Canadians. And that is, and again, that is why I'm so honored to have Premier Higgs here. I can tell you what our candidates are hearing at the doors in Ontario. They're hearing that life is getting more expensive. They're worried about crime in places like Brampton and Toronto. They are frustrated that this Liberal government has actually lowered penalties on dangerous criminals. They are aware of the damage that Kathleen Wynne's Liberal government did for so long in Ontario, and they are aware of the fact that Justin Trudeau is running the exact same playbook. And that is why I believe that voters in Ontario will do at the federal level what they did at the provincial level, that is put an end to scandal-plagued, deficit-running, tax-hiking Liberal government. C'est un honneur d'avoir Premier ministre Higgs ici avec moi aujourd'hui. Je crois que c'est très simple. Nous avons la même position sur les enjeux importants comme la taxe sur le carbone et l'appui pour notre secteur énergétique. Je peux vous dire que nos candidats en Ontario entendent à les portes que les Ontariens sont tannés avec le crime, tannés avec les hausses d'impôts, tannés de le fait que le gouvernement fédéral accumule les déficits, augmente les impôts et dans le milieu des scandales.
Good morning, Jacques Poitras from CBC in New Brunswick. We spoke to a number of consumers at a gas station yesterday about the carbon tax, and the majority of them said, we know it's there, kind of getting used to it, don't notice it as much as we did before. Wholesale gas prices are below what they were in April. What would you say to those voters?
Well, I can tell you the voters I've heard from are frustrated by the fact that they have to pay the carbon tax. They're even more frustrated that they have to pay tax on the carbon tax. And when Justin Trudeau says that higher gas prices are exactly what he wants, that frustrates motorists across the country. Our plan is to scrap the carbon tax. We're going to put more money back in the pockets of Canadians. We're also going to take the GST and HST off of home heating to recognize that it's not a luxury to heat your home in the winter. It's also proof that the carbon tax isn't working. If it's not changing behavior, it's clearly not working. So Justin Trudeau has to come clean with how high his carbon tax is going to go after the election.
Hi, Mr. Scheer. Janice Dixon, the Globe and Mail. Earlier this week, you said you finished your degree in Ottawa when I asked for clarification. But over the years, you've told a number of journalists that you finished in Regina. Why is that the case?
So my degree is granted from the University of Ottawa. I finished it while I was in Regina, the combination of courses from the University of Regina and correspondence courses. I then had those credits transferred back to the University of Ottawa to obtain my degree.
Okay, thank you. And on a different topic, would a Conservative government appeal the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal order that says Canada must compensate First Nations children living on reserve for failing to provide funding for child and family service? The deadline for this appeal is Monday. I realize you're not in government then, but just we're looking for your thoughts on this.
Wait, I believe this question came up during the Maclean's debate. This is a far-reaching decision that has major impacts on multiple levels of government and many different departments within government. And for that reason, I felt like it was appropriate, that it would be appropriate to have a judicial review of this decision. Oui. Cette décision va avoir un impact significatif sur le gouvernement fédéral et beaucoup des départements. Alors, c'est la raison pour laquelle j'ai ma position, c'est mieux d'avoir une revue juridique sur cette question.
Good morning, Mr. Scheer. Silas Brown, Global New Brunswick. This is obviously your second visit to New Brunswick during the campaign, but this is also your second visit to primarily Anglophone part of the province. What do you have to say to voters in the primarily Francophone North to convince them that you will represent all New Brunswickers, not just those in the South?
Well, actually, I was here celebrating the Acadian culture in New Brunswick just before the election started. And I've always made it very clear that our government will ensure that Francophone rights are protected across this country. And we have great candidates throughout New Brunswick that are representing Franco-New Brunswickers. Oui, j'ai visité le Nouveau-Brunswick pour célébrer l'histoire acadienne, le fait français ici au Nouveau-Brunswick, juste avant que les élections ont commencé. Mais c'est bien sûr qu'on va avoir un message d'appui pour tous les francophones partout au Canada.
Obviously, the southern part of the province has been an area where your party has had a lot of success in the past, and you yourself have spent quite a bit of time here in the southern part of the province. Would you say that it's more of a priority for you to be down here in the southern part where you believe you may have a better chance at electing some MPs?
Well, you know, in a campaign writ that is only around 40 days and there are 338 ridings, I wish I could visit every single one of them. I obviously spent a lot of time this summer visiting many ridings in the hopes of coming back a second time. We'll see how the campaign unfolds and see how we can do as much of that as possible. We're very optimistic for gains all throughout Atlantic Canada. In the last election, the Liberals went 32 for 32, but the people of Atlantic Canada feel like they've gone 0 for 32 under this Liberal government. This Liberal government imposed a carbon tax. This Liberal government killed a west to east pipeline that would have created jobs right here in New Brunswick. They have a minister responsible for the Atlantic Canadian Opportunities Agency, who comes from Toronto. So they've clearly taken this region for granted. We won't, and we are going to win seats back all over Atlantic Canada.
Andrew Ward, Telegraph Journal from St. John. You've said that you and Premier Higgs are kind of on the same page on a bunch of files. One of the files you don't seem to be on the same page is about healthcare transfers. The Premier has talked about how New Brunswick's ageing population and demographic needs to be recognised in those payments. You have said you will honour the current agreement. How do you reconcile that difference?
Well, I will take this opportunity to point out the hypocrisy of Justin Trudeau for running against the current formula in the last election and then locking it in going forward. Just another example of how he was not as advertised during the 2015 election. I understand the challenges that Premier Higgs has brought up with as it relates to New Brunswick's specific situation with an aging population. That is one of the reasons why I made the commitment that we will increase funding for healthcare by at least 3% every year, and why we also announced that we will create a fund that will help provinces purchase life-saving diagnostic equipment like MRIs and CT scans. That will help address wait times while ensuring that the province can meet its needs to provide these types of services.
When you do those funding increases, will they take the demographic age of the population into account?
We're committed right now to the current formula, which includes a 3% increase. But I've always said that I would have a much more cooperative approach with the premiers. Every province has unique challenges. For some provinces, it can be large cities with all the challenges that come with large infrastructure projects. For others, it may be aging populations or less dense populations spread out over larger land areas. Others, it can be higher population, economies that are more dependent on industries that have much greater cycles that can rise and fall drastically. So I've always sent the signal to premiers that when I sit down around the table with them, they won't have to take me to court for me to hear their concerns, that I'd work in a cooperative manner with all of them. Oui. Alors, nous avons fait un engagement pour la formule actuelle pour 3% au minimum par année, mais j'ai aussi dit que je vais avoir un esprit de coopération avec tous les premiers ministres de toutes les provinces. Il y a des enjeux différents, les défis différents pour chaque province, et je vais avoir une relation très coopérative et collaborative. Merci beaucoup. Thanks very much.